And from the heart of Silicon Valley in California, this is Plug-in 2008. And you've got an exclusive press pass.
I do want to, thank the two people that have really made this conference a success, and that's Mark Duval here and Tom Turrentine from UC Davis from that Plug-in Hybrid Vehicle Center that Jim Boyd mentioned. And they deserve tremendous credit for making this happen for this first annual conference. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to lay out briefly a 7-point action plan. So we're talking about the pathway to get there. Okay, so I'm going to provide you an action plan, a policy action plan. And before that, I do that, let me just discuss just very briefly my personal overarching philosophy on how best to do this. And this integrates together what I've studied for more than a couple decades in the university and academia with what I've been learning in Sacramento politics. And that's been a steep learning curve, I would mention. Okay, first of all, I think what we really need to focus on are durable frameworks that somehow, and I mentioned this idea of durable is important because frameworks that somehow take into account these many externalities that exist and these many market failures that exist in the transport and fuel sector. We don't want a reinvention every 5 years or 10 years of new policies or new programs. We need targets and programs that are put in place where there's signals being sent to the consumers, to the vehicle suppliers, to the fuel suppliers. And do it in such a way that the decision that has to be made intermittently is tightening the target, not creating entire new programs. A second important principle is that these policies should be performance-based. We need to avoid the tendency of government picking winners and picking losers. And performance standards are a way, when combined with these durable frameworks, being integral to them is a way to do that. And third is, I say this a little reluctantly, but we do need mandates as well. They should be used sparingly. They should be narrow, targeting specific market failures. But we do need them because there are these many market failures and there are these startup problems and barriers. Okay, and then before I lay out this 7-point plan, there's two other two other issues, two sets of uncertainties that are very important in terms of plug-in vehicles. And I happen to think the challenge is not on the technical side, it's mostly on the market side and the consumer side. The first part of it is we don't even know what consumers really want, what they're willing to pay for. Would they prefer a 100-mile-per-gallon car? Or do they really prefer that all-electric range that we keep talking about? GM Volt tends to, emphasize the all-electric range, but there's a lot of evidence, a study that just came out from my colleagues at UC Davis that suggests that people value the fuel economy improvement much more than they do with the all-electric range. Now, I should point out that those same people that did the study in earlier years came to just the opposite conclusion. So, I think it's an important study, but it also points out that, what's probably going on, of course, is, when you have $4, $4.50 a gallon, as people have been saying, it focuses the mind in the pocketbook. But we really don't understand that. We really don't know that. And that's a big problem for the automakers because they have to figure out, they have to make decisions on what kind of technology they're going to lock in, what kind of vehicle, and how they're going to market it. And the other part of it on the market side, the consumer side, is the charging behavior. We all take it for granted. All these graphs all show how people are going to use electricity, and it's all assumed that's going to be off-peak. We don't really know that. In fact, what we do know is, if electricity really is only a cent or two a mile, which I don't think it is, but even if it's 3 or 4 cents, then, are people going to worry about paying that at any time of day? In fact, aren't they going to be more likely to want to use that electricity whenever they get a chance, especially to get that a high MPG or that long all-electric range. And yes, we talk about on-peak rates and smart grids and all this, but we really don't know how consumers are going to respond, and that's absolutely critical if we want to get the energy and environmental benefits from this. So, okay, let me lay out this 7-point action plan. Okay, the first 3 of these items that I'm going to mention, these 3 points, are actually in place or almost in place in California. So we're making good progress here, and some of them Jim Boyd just mentioned. The first is the low carbon fuel standard. And this is something that is being adopted as part of California's climate plan, Global Warming Solutions Act. Required some of these early action items. This is one of the early action items. It will be adopted in 4 months in November. And what it does is it provides a target, a performance target to the oil companies to reduce the carbon content of their fuels. Now, there's only a limited number of things they can actually do to the gasoline. They can blend in biofuels. And we're starting to see the difficulties with biofuels, and we're starting to see that the greenhouse gas emissions associated with biofuels are probably more than we had been assuming in the past. And so biofuels are becoming a little more difficult. And so what that means, that's good news for the electricity side, because this is a performance-based rule. It means all players are welcome. And so this means there's going to be even more stronger incentives and value placed on the use of electricity in transportation, even than we had been thinking about a year ago or so. So this will be, and this is not just a California, so this is being adopted in California. There's 12 others, or actually quite a few other states that have said they're going to adopt it as well. A few Canadian provinces, the European Union is moving in that direction. There's a good chance this will go national as federal policy eventually, my prediction. So we have that. And that's real important because that targets the fuel suppliers, the oil suppliers, and the electricity suppliers, because it gives credit to the electric utilities. It gives value, even more value, to the electricity they supply to vehicles. Okay, number 2 is targeting the vehicle suppliers, and that would be having strong greenhouse gas and fuel economy standards. And federally, we've got the 40% increase in the CAFE standards for 2020. California and 12 other states have the so-called PAVLI Act, also known as AB 1493, which is expected to go into effect next year. It's got a long controversial history, but all indications are that it's likely to be taking effect next year. And this goes even beyond the CAFE standards. It's a greenhouse gas standard, but it puts even more pressure on the automakers to bring down the greenhouse gas emissions, the CO2 emissions, and the fuel, and improve the fuel economy. And it is performance-based as well. And then I said, we do need some targeted mandates. And the zero-emission vehicle mandate, sometimes we think of as a near-zero emission vehicle mandate, which has led a very tortured history. But a few months ago, it was some changes were adopted. It requires, for the 2012 to 2014 time period, it requires the automakers to supply either 12,000 battery EVs or 7,500 fuel cell vehicles, plus 58,000 plug-in hybrids. And there's a lot of question, was this, too soft or was it too aggressive? But I think most of us now feel like it can be and should be much strengthened. And so next year, the Air Board will be starting a process to overhaul the entire ZEV program, Zero Emission Vehicle Program, to simplify it. It's one of the most complicated rules that anyone ever tried to understand. We're going to try to we will simplify it, and we'll greatly strengthen the requirements. And so, you can think of up to maybe even an order of magnitude increase in those requirements for starting in 2015. So these will be rules that will take effect in 2015. So those are the 3 that are in place or almost in place, and that's really good news. Then I have 4 more items. One is focusing on the consumers. We really need much stronger incentives for consumers to buy and to use those plug-in vehicles. And I'm talking about local governments playing a role, state and federal. And one good idea, what I think is a very good idea, is the fee-based idea. And that is that if you buy a vehicle that has very low greenhouse gas emissions or very low fuel consumption, you get a big rebate. If you buy one that's a gas guzzler, then you pay a higher fee. So that's an idea and you can make it revenue neutral. That sends a strong signal and to the consumer and also to the automaker to